Without a doubt, one of the most misunderstood issues with nonprofits is the issue of selling stuff. Can a nonprofit sell goods and services? Well, the short answer is yes, but you're going to want to stick around after the intro to hear the details on this because, trust me, the details matter. Hi, I'm Greg McRae, founder and CEO of Foundation Group, and welcome back to our 501c3 University channel, where we strive to make nonprofit issues understandable. So, you want your nonprofit to be able to sell goods or services, but you're not sure if you can, or maybe you think you can, but you don't know the ramifications of doing that. Well, we won't have time in this video to cover every potential angle, but for the next few minutes, I'm going to unpack the bigger issues of sales inside a nonprofit. Let's get started. And just to give you a preview of our main topics, I'm going to be talking specifically about program revenue, the Commerciality Doctrine, and unrelated business income in that order. Now, we've touched on some of this in our earlier video on unrelated business income, so be sure and check out that one if you haven't seen it already. So, program revenue. Program revenue is defined as income generated by a nonprofit through the sales of goods or services, the sale of which directly furthers the exempt purpose of the organization. The part of this definition I want to highlight is the section that says directly furthers the exempt purpose of the organization. This is key. If the sales activity that is generating the revenue doesn't directly further the exempt purpose, well, then it isn't program revenue. And we'll talk in a minute about what it might be instead. Directly furthers means exactly what it says. To some extent, your nonprofit's charitable mission is being furthered directly by the sale of the goods or services in question. So what does that look like? Well, some examples include a private school charging tuition to students, a 501c3 community theater selling tickets to productions, or maybe a youth baseball team charging a participation fee. In all three of these scenarios, the fees paid are directly related to the charitable program, making the money generated by the activity satisfy the definition of program revenue. So what's the big deal about program revenue? Well, for one thing, program revenue isn't taxable. And even though it's a business activity of sorts, it escapes the classification of commercial activity, which we'll talk about next. Program revenue also helps public charity 501c3s satisfy the public support test. Though you don't often see this, some charities exist solely on program revenue and have virtually no donations given to them. So program revenue, it's a good thing. Our next topic is the Commerciality Doctrine. This so-called doctrine wasn't established by the IRS, but rather by the courts. But the IRS does use it to make revenue determinations. The Commerciality Doctrine looks at whether a nonprofit organization is operating in a manner that is too commercial to be operating primarily in furtherance of an exempt purpose. Now, some of the factors considered include adopting profit-maximizing pricing, marketing in a commercial manner, generating unreasonable profit margins, and selling to the general public instead of a specific target group. The main problem with the Commerciality Doctrine is that it is highly subjective and not something originally written into the tax code. And there are two ways this can be an issue. One way is for clearly program revenue related activity to become commercial in nature due to some of the factors I listed. Maybe instead of reasonable tuition fees, a private school starts charging 4 times what other area schools are charging. But even then, it is really subjective. Maybe the average class size is only 5 students and the teachers all have PhDs. However, the truth is that program revenue becoming too commercialized, that's not usually how this issue comes up. The primary way this comes up is when a nonprofit's proposed program is just too similar to existing commercial models. We hear thousands of new nonprofit proposals from potential clients every year, and this issue comes up a lot. Some people are under the idea that if they restrict their customer base to only a charitable class or maybe other nonprofits, then their otherwise commercial business idea, well, it can be a nonprofit. They'll even charge below market rates. Unfortunately, that's not enough. An example of this happened recently. A potential client was talking with one of our sales reps, and this person was proposing to start a nonprofit that would provide professional video production services, but only for churches. They even proposed to provide the production services for about 25% less than what other area video production companies charge, and they were quite disappointed to learn that their idea would run afoul of the Commerciality Doctrine. Churches, as 501c3 organizations, are potentially a charitable class. However, video production isn't a charitable activity. It's just an ordinary, run-of-the-mill business operation with dozens of competing businesses in any sizable city. The pushback from the potential client was that they were satisfying a charitable purpose by helping churches spread their message via video. That, however, is what we around here call mission by extension. In other words, it's indirect benefit. It is impossible for the video production company to adequately satisfy the charitable purpose requirement when their production activity doesn't directly affect charitable outcomes. Our third topic is unrelated business income. I mentioned this before, but I highly recommend you go check out our complete video on that topic. We'll just hit the highlights here. Unrelated business income is revenue generated by the ongoing sale of goods and services by a nonprofit organization that does not directly further the exempt purpose of that organization. In other words, if the activity violates the principles of the Commerciality Doctrine, then at best the revenue becomes unrelated business income and therefore is subject to tax. Now, that's not a complete deal breaker unless, of course, unrelated business income reaches an amount relative to your overall income that the IRS determines that you're no longer exclusively about a charitable purpose. That's bad. In that case, your nonprofit could lose its 501c3 status. There are exceptions, and that mostly revolves around short-term fundraising. Some commercial-looking activity, like Girl Scout cookies, for example, because it only happens for a short period of time each year, that's not UBI, but is considered fundraising revenue. Again, go watch the unrelated business income video to get more on that subject. Well, I hope this discussion about selling goods and services has helped you understand the issue better. Thanks for watching. Now go serve your community. Hey, do me a favor and don't navigate away just yet. We would really appreciate it if you would hit the like button below, as it really helps get our content recommended to more people. Subscribe if you haven't already, as we have great content coming your way on a regular basis. Finally, you can click the little bell icon to be notified of new content when we post it. To learn more about Foundation Group, you can visit us on the web at www.501c3.org. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.